Okay, so we're in week 3 repetition. There was no class on Tuesday, but I didn't move things around. We'll still have to do them anyway. So I'll cover everything as far as this week is concerned, which is repetition. But first, any questions about anything we did so far? Any of the assignments, any of the things we covered? We're all good. All right, I believe you. So, some of the things that we have learned so far: input, output, doing some basic arithmetic, and then selecting, like selecting between which way our program is supposed to go. Now what we're going to do is we're going to do repetition, and let's have a look at what that is. So let's say I have some line of code like, I don't know, I have some stars in there, okay? And then what I'm going to do is, let's say I have, there you go, 4 lines, right? So I have 4 lines of code, could be 1,000 lines of code, right? And then later on, I'm going to get these same lines of code and I'm going to repeat them, right? So if I run the program, that's what it looks like, nothing surprising, that's what you know already. Okay, but what I want to do is, I want to eliminate the repeating lines of code. Okay, how am I going to do this? I'm going to put them inside of a function. And actually, hold on, I'm talking about functions. We don't want to talk about functions. So what I'm going to do is, let's say this line of code right here, right? The 8 lines of code, right? What I'm going to do is, I'm going to simplify them to a single line of code. So I'm going to take these out. Right? I'm going to do for I in range. How many of these do I have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Right? So I'm going to say, okay, you're going to go from 0 to 8, steps of 1, and you're going to print this line, like this. Okay? And if I run my code, it will look exactly like the other code that you saw. Okay? So how does the for loop work? By the way, this is a for loop. Right? For loop, right? And the syntax of a for loop is you have for some variable name, right? In range, and then you have a start, stop, and a step. Okay? And if you start typing a for loop, when you start doing a for I in range, it actually guides you through that, right? See how it tells you start, stop, step, right? So start, where is this thing going to start? Starts at 0. Stop, where is it going to stop? It's going to stop at 8. And step is by how much is it going to increase. So instead of showing you these lines of code, let me do something else. So I'm going to leave this there, right? So replace the 8 lines of code above using a for loop. Right, so you can see that I simplified the code. Now let me show you, so I'm just going to copy this thing here, what actually happens. So if I go in there and I just do a print I equals I, and I run this thing, you're going to see that this for loop is actually changing the variable I. So it changes it starts at 0, it goes to 1 less than 8, it doesn't go all the way to the 8, and it increases it by 1, right? So the values of my I, so I is equal to 0, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, right? It does not get all the way to the 8, right? If I wanted to include the 8, then I just change this to a 9, and then I can run my code, and now it goes to 8, okay? So let's leave it back to 8. Okay, so this is an example when your step is 1, right? So increments of 1. Increments of 1, okay? You can have the loop increment by more than 1. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this here. Okay, I'm going to paste it there. And now I'm going to change this thing to 2. Okay, so now what it's going to do is it will do 0, 2, 4, 6, it won't get to the 8 again. So if I run it, let me put a little separator. All right, one more time. Okay, any questions? Yes?
And how to decrement?
Decrement. Okay, that's
or
coming.
Multiply.
The multiplication, you could do a while loop for that. I'll show you that in a second. But if you wanted to increase by a certain step, that would be a for loop, right? So this is increments of 1. We have increments of 2 here, right? And now the question was, how do we decrement? Okay, we can decrement this thing. So this time, what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this whole thing. Right? And this time what I'm going to do is, let's say I want this thing to start at 10, and then I want it to go 7, what's the next one? 4, minus 3, 1, right? Let's try this thing. So I'm going to tell her, okay, start at 10, then I'm going to tell it go on until you get to, I don't know, let's go to the 0. Okay? And then I'm going to tell it go backwards, and this is going to be a minus 3. Okay, so decrement of, minus 3. Okay, so let's try this. If I run it, all right, 10, 7, 4, 1. So that's how you do decrement. Okay, so you can tell it to go forward, you can tell it to go backward, you can change the increments, you can change the decrements. That's the basics of a for loop, right? So when would you use a for loop, right? A for loop, right? Use it when you know how many times something is supposed to happen. Okay? So if I know how many times it's going to happen, if I know it's going to start from 0 and it's going to go to 1,000 and it's going to go by plus whatever something, you use a for loop. Okay? And so these are basically fixed numbers, but you can also say, let's say in here now what I want to do is, let's say I want to have a loop. I'm just going to copy this first one. Okay. All right. So now what I'm going to do is I am going to tell the user, I'm going to ask the user, so this one here is going to be a loop that happens as many times as the user wants to, right? So let's say I'm going to say, I'll say many is equal to int input, and I'll ask the user, how many times do you want to repeat? And the user I let the user enter that, and then I'm just going to replace this number 8 here with many, right? So whatever the user enters, that's how many times that's how many times the loop is going to happen. So I run it one more time. All right, how many times do you want this thing to happen? 3 times. There you go, 0, 1, 2. Okay? And if you don't want to show the 0, 1, 2 and want to show 1, 2, 3, all you got to do is just change this thing to +1. All right? That's one way to do it. So there you go, 3 times. And now it shows you 1, 2, 3. Okay? Any questions? All right. So examples of a for loop, again, just if you know how many times something is going to happen, use a for loop. That's just the cleaner code. That's the way you want to do it. Now, let's get into while loops. Okay, so what is a while loop? Well, it's another way to do this. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in there and I'm going to rewrite the above for loop using a while loop. Okay? So for the while loop, I'll do this. I'll say, okay, my I is equal to 0 while I is less than 8. And then in here, I'm just going to print my I, just like I did normally. I'm just going to add a little label here so you know where it's coming from. This is the while. All right? And in here, I have to tell it by how much to increment. So remember how you had your start, you had your stop, you had your step, right? So remember, you had start, stop, step. So now my start is this. This is the start. This is the stop. And the step is I is equal to I plus 1. That's your step. Okay, so all I did is I just grabbed this thing here and I broke it down into separate lines pretty much. This is one line, second line, third line, right? And that's why if you know how many times something's going to happen, use a for loop. It's a cleaner code, easier to write, less confusing. Okay, so let's so that will be for this one. Let me show you. And right, so same thing that I did with the first for loop. Here I am, I did it with a while loop. Okay, so let me go in there and change the other one. So increments of 2. Alright, so I'm going to rewrite the above. I'm going to copy this whole thing here. Alright, rewrite the above for loop using a while loop. So my start is still 0, my stop is 8, my step is 2 now. So all I got to do is I got to go and change this thing to a 2. And now it's the same thing. So if I run it, right, you can see this the same way, right? This is the for loop, and this is the while loop after it. Okay, now let's do the last one. Let me copy this. All right, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do this one with a while loop. Okay, so this one's going to starts at 10, right? It goes on until you get 1 before 0. So I'm going to tell it go on while I is greater than 0. Okay, and I'm going to tell it now my step is -3, right? -3. I'm just going to go, this one here is -3. Okay, so if I run this, then there you go. Same thing with the while loop that we did with the for loop. Okay, except a couple of extra lines of code. All right, and then I can also rewrite this thing here too. This here, technically, I can write that too. So, oops, let me rewrite. All right, rewrite the above for loop using a while loop. I'm going to ask the user to enter one thing for many. So I'm going to start this thing at 0. That's where this thing starts. This thing goes on while I is less than many. All right, many. And it's going to go by in increments of 1. All right, so I just go in there plus 1. Okay, and if I run this thing again, I want this thing to happen 3 times. There you go. All right. I forgot to show you the +1 in there, but you know, same thing. Okay? Any questions? All right, so you're going to ask yourself, well, why are we going to do this with a while loop if I can do it with a for loop? You shouldn't, right? If you can do it with a for loop, do it with a for loop. But the while loop is actually like an if that happens many times. So let's say, for example, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to comment all this stuff here because I don't want to see it anymore. All right. So I'm going to take all these out. And let's say, remember how you could have, let's say you have an age and you tell the user input and you tell them please enter age between, I don't know, 0 to 123, right? So those are the only two, that's the range of numbers that this is valid for. And then at some point we did like if age is less than 0 or my age is bigger than 123, you tell them something like invalid age, right? The input validation, and then you ask them again, right? So this is input validation, right? Making sure the user enters good data. All right, so if they enter bad data, let's try it. So I don't know what I'm doing. I'm giving it a negative, right? Invalid age, but I still don't know what I'm doing. Now I'm giving it a really big number, and it took it. And it's fine because the way I've written the program, the if only was going to happen one time, right? But what I can do is I can easily fix this by just changing it to a while loop. So instead of an if, right, I do while. Okay, and now if I run it again, I give it a bad value, I give it a big value, another bad value, another bad value. It will be stuck in this loop forever until I get it right, which is what you want. You don't want the user to enter some garbage that's going to crash your program. You want to make sure they give you the good data. So this is the input validation. Okay, so it's just like an if that happens multiple times, and that's where you should be using the while. If you can't, obviously there's no way for me to do this with a for loop. Use a while. What else? What else? Let's see. So I have some links in there. Question?
Still about the difference between for loop and while loop.
Mm-hmm.
For loop, you can use that for. You mean the while loop can decreasement, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they can do the multiplication.
Yes.
For loop cannot do multiplication.
Well, we could do multiplication, but not with the loop itself, if that makes sense. So, for example,
One of the assignment that says by 0.01 and 1 day 30 days.
Mhm.
That
yeah, I'll go through those. So basically, in the while loop, right? So if you have let me put it to you this way. If I have a for I in range from 0 to, I don't know, 10, right? I can't have my variable change by a multiplication factor. It's always going to be a plus something, right? That's how it's going to work. But in a while loop, so remember this here translates to if I have an I is equal to 0 while I is less than 10, and then I is equal to I plus 1, right? So it's always plus 1 for a for loop. Okay, but if I wanted to, in a while loop, I don't have to have a plus here. I can tell it, oh, I is equal to I times 10. That's fine. I can do that. Okay, so yeah, you can do these kind of extra operations that you can't do in the for loop. And I'll go through the examples for the assignments that you have to do. So you'll see. Okay, so this is just the input validation. This is your basic input validation. If you do this for your programs, I'll be happy. But there's a better way to do it, right? And I'll show you that too. So I'm just going to run this first, and I'm going to show you how you can break this also, right? So it works fine if you give it like numbers, right? Really, really big number or whatever. You finally give it a good one and it stops, right? Okay, but I can break it. So remember, this is an integer input, right? And what I'm going to do is, let's say I'm going to go and give it a -9 or whatever, and then in here I'm going to do 3.14. Now I broke it. Why? Because it's expecting an integer, and I gave it a float, right? I can break it again for you. All right, so I'm going to give it a good value to get in the loop, bad value I mean, and then in there I'm going to type in a string. Again, I broke it. It's expecting for me to enter an integer. I gave it some garbage, and it gave me a value error. Okay, so no good. So how am I going to fix this? So let's say I'm not even going to have an input here. I'm just going to say age is equal to -9, so it's a bad number, so we can get into the loop to begin with. And the next thing I'm going to do is, I have an input here, right? So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to try to do this. So first of all, without it, let's just see how it works. All right. So if I do this, -9, 9999, right? It goes on forever until I give it a good value. Okay. So what I'm going to do actually is I'm going to leave this like that, and I'm just going to copy it, and that way you have an example of the other kind also. So this was the basic one. Like, and again, if you do this, I'll be happy with this. But if you really want to be able to handle these errors, right, this kind of stuff, the value error, blah, 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 we can replace this meaningless red text to something that we want to tell the user. And how do we do that? We just use the try. So I'm going to say try this. Okay? Try this. And I'm going to tell it except, and I can copy this error right here. So it's a value error. All right? Value error. And in the value error, I'll tell them print, you need to enter an integer. Okay? Or let's just tell them you did not enter an integer. Okay? Now let's try this thing. So I'm going to run this. And I'm going to give it, so we're getting into this loop. I'm going to give it a -9, -9, 9999. Okay, it's working for those. Now let's try 3.14. You did not enter an integer. Okay? So the value of age is still, it's still bad, right? It's still not a good value, so I'm going to go try it again. Okay? This time I'm going to give it some string. Okay? Still no good, right? So, but these two errors that we encountered earlier when I entered a string and a float are no longer there. Okay? And all I had to do is I had to do a try and accept. And now it works. Okay? So let's try to stop it. So 99, and it stops. Okay? So Python makes it very easy for you to do this kind of an input validation. And C++, it's terrible to do something like that. It'll give you a headache. In Java, you could do it, but you have to write half a page of code to get it done. In Python, it's very easy. Just try, accept. In fact, you don't even have to tell it what kind of an error it is. If I skip the value error, if I just do accept, then it will be for any kind of an error. Okay? But let's just keep it to value error for now. Okay? So this is your basic input validation on top, and then a little fancier on the bottom with error handling, which you should be able to do also. Any questions?
Do you have to have the try there?
You have to have the try in order to have the accept. Yeah, you have to have a try, and what are we trying to do? We're trying to do this. So if there's something that could result in an error, you can put a try in front of it, like similar to like the index out of range. You can do a for loop with a, well, actually, we haven't done that yet. But later on, when we do lists have indexes, and you can run into an error, list index out of range. You can handle that error also. Basically, any kind of an error that you can run into, you do a try and accept, and it works. Okay, in other languages like Java, it's try and catch, but same kind of a deal. You're catching an exception. Okay. So that is that. These are the basics of loops, right? And you could have loops inside of other loops, right? So one of the very common things are, let's say I want this to happen multiple times, right? So let's say, because that's going to happen. I know I'm going to run into that question. So let's say I want to do this business, all right? I'll go with a shorter one. Okay. All right. So I'm going to do this. Okay. But at the end, what I want to do is, so I want the program to repeat as many times as the user wants to. Okay. So the user is not going to tell me how many times in advance. It's going to be at the end of this whole thing, right? So let me just take this out. So I want the program to repeat. So I want this code to repeat. If I run it, right, I give it one value, like 9, and it's good. So maybe I should even show you. All right? So print valid age, right? And I can show you it's this age, right? And then at the end, what I'm going to do is, let's say I want to say print or I'm going to do an input. Repeat is equal to input. Would you like to repeat the program? Okay, and then I should tell the user what to enter so that they know, right? Tell them yes or no. That's what I want you to enter. Okay. And what is it that I want to repeat? I want this piece to repeat. To repeat. Right? I'm going to repeat basically this whole thing. Right? To repeat. Okay? So at the end, I have repeat is blah, blah, blah. So all I got to do is, this is the section I want to repeat. I'm going to tab it. And then before it, I'm going to put a while loop. I'm just going to say while true. Right? So now this is a loop that goes on forever. Right? Before I get into this, let me show you an example of a never-ending loop. Right? So I go in there and I do, and you can do this kind of a stuff with a for loop, by the way. If you accidentally don't set up the for loop the right way, you can let it go on forever and eventually it will crash. So let's say while true, and then in here I'm just going to say print height and end equals, so it stays on the same line. Right? When I run this thing, that is a never-ending loop. Right? We'll go on and on and on and on and on. So you want to kill this thing with Control C, right? To kill it, Control C. Okay, so this is a never-ending loop. Now, what we're going to do is, I'm going to have a loop that goes on until the user stops it. So first, I showed you that this thing goes on forever. So I'm not going to do a high. I'm just going to do something else. I'm going to say repeat is equal to input, basically this thing that I have here. So I'm just going to copy it. Right? And then let's see how that works with no other changes to this. Right? So I just run this one more time. Now it doesn't keep making highs every time it goes through the loop. It interrupts the loop to ask me to enter a value. It will still go on forever. Right? It doesn't matter. Do you want to repeat? No. Yes. Whatever. No, it goes on forever. So I'm going to have to still Control C it to kill this thing. Okay? So the next step is, how do I stop this? If my repeat is equal to yes or no, right? I can also write it as if repeat is not equal to yes, right? That's also good. I'm just going to say break. Okay, so this here stops the loop. So if I run it, would you like to repeat the program? Yeah, whatever. No, stops. Okay. So, what else? All right, so stops the loop, and also basically stops and exits the loop here, right? So what does that mean? That means that if I go in there and I do a print hello, right? This is not going to show if they say I don't want to repeat. Okay, so nothing after the break shows. Nothing after the break will show. Okay, so this here not going to show if user enters no. Okay, so I run it, and do you want to repeat? Yeah, no, and it doesn't show you the hello. Okay, questions? Make sense? All right, so very important for you to know how to break a loop, right? Because you're going to run into these issues, and the practical application that I have is this right here, right? So I told you that let's say a lot of these assignments that you're going to get is going to be, they're going to ask you, write a program, and at the end of the program, tell the user to ask them if they want to repeat the whole thing again. How do you do that? This, right? So find out what you want to repeat, which is usually the whole thing, right? Whatever it is you want to repeat, and then indent it inside of a while true, which is a loop that goes on forever, And just like we did here, right? You basically copy this right in there. Okay, make sure the indentation is perfect. And let me change this thing to the other one so you can see that it works. So this one is if repeat is not equal to yes. Okay, so if I basically for anything other than yes, this thing is going to break. It will work slightly different from the other one. The other one only stopped at a no. This one is going to stop for anything other than a yes. Okay, so let's try this. Alright, -9, -9, big number, right? Give it a good number now. You enter this. Would you like to repeat the program? Yes, I do. Right? And again, we go back to the beginning. Right? Here's a good number. Would you like to repeat the program? Anything other than yes. So I'm not entering a yes. Repeat is not going to be equal to yes. And now the program is going to stop. Okay? Questions? Make sense? All right. So this is pretty much the practical applications that I want you to know about loops. So you can have one loop inside of another loop. Later on, when we start doing a little more complicated things, you're going to see that there's other applications for having these loops. By the way, this is an example of a nested loop, right? A loop inside of another loop. Right? Just like we did with ifs, with the selection, we can have nested ifs, you can have nested loops. All right, so that is pretty much what I have in here. And I have some examples of loops here too. And yeah, pretty much all the stuff that I showed you is there with the exception handling. Okay, so some practical applications in here that I have are summing things or example of accumulation. All right, so let's say, for example, I'm going to turn this off. So what I want to do is I want the user to enter a bunch of values and find their sum. Okay? So let's say, for example, I have this, the usual business, many is equal to int input how many numbers would you like to enter? Okay, and you have your, if you know how many times it's going to happen, you do a for loop, for I in range from 0 to many, steps of 1, always 1, since you're going to happen as many times as the user wants to, and then you're going to ask them to enter a number. And then you tell them, all right, int input, let's keep it, make it a float, float input, all right? Please enter a number, all right? And then what I'm going to do is I have to find the sum of these numbers that were entered. So what I do, I make a variable, let's call it uppercase sum. I have to make it equal to 0. And then I'm going to sum is equal to its old value plus the number that was entered. Okay? That's the example of accumulation. So sum is equal to its old value plus the number that was entered. Right? So how would this work? Let's say, for example, they go in there, they enter the values 1, 2, 3, right? They want to enter 3 numbers. So initially sum is 0. So what is it going to do? Let me get to the end of this line. All right, so what it will do is, in here, it will be basically equal to its old value, which is 0, plus the first number that was entered, so now it's 1. Okay, then the next time they enter the next number, it's going to be equal to its old value plus 2. So now it's going to be equal to 1 plus 2, and that's equal to 3. Right? The next time they go and they enter the last number, the 3, right? Sum is going to be equal to its old value, which is 3, what we calculated from before, plus the new one, which is 3, so now it's equal to 6. All right, so when this is all said and done, my result should be sum is equal to sum. All right, so this should show me a 6 for these three numbers. All right, so how many numbers do I want to enter? 3, 1, 2, 3. There you go. Okay, so this is an example of accumulation. And by the way, you already saw examples of accumulation, right? That's what happens in the regular while loop. You start something at 0 and then you just accumulate values into that thing, right? Any questions? So this stuff is very important. You should know how to do these. All right. There's going to be a whole bunch of assignments that I'm going to ask you find the sum, find a min, find a max, all those kinds of different things. Okay. So that's a basic accumulation. Now, one thing is, let's say, for example, I want to show the numbers here. I want to tell them, please enter number 1. Right? So if I wanted to, I can do it this way. I can say percent number. Let's do it this way. I'm going to put a plus str I in there and then another plus in there. Okay? And I'm going to do a +1 in here too, so it looks right. So I'll run it one more time so you can see. So how many numbers do you want to enter? 3. And now it shows you the actual number. Okay? So give it a 1, 2, 3, and same business as before. So far so good? Okay. Alright. So let's see what else I have for this week so that I can give you enough. Okay. Sum of positive and negative numbers. Okay, so I showed you an example of finding the sum. So I'm going to show you how to find. I also want to find the sum of only the negative numbers. Okay? So I go in there and I'm just going to go and define another variable. I'm going to call it sum neg. And before I just added every value they entered into my sum, but this one is only going to be for the negative numbers. So I'm going to just go and do an if my number is less than 0, right? If it is a negative number, then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to say sum neg is equal to sum neg plus the number. Okay, so that's add it to the sum of negative numbers. Okay? Questions? So let's test it. Print sum neg equals sum neg, and let's try it. So how many numbers do I want to enter? Let's do 4 numbers. I'm going to do a 1, 2, and then -1, -2. So my sum should be a 0 because I have 3 and a -3. But the sum of the negatives is a -3. Okay? Questions? Still good? All right. So that's what you have to do for P17 pretty much. So this is your P17 hint. P17 hint. All right. Now let's have a look at something else. So let's just go through the different assignments for this week. All right. So P15. All right. So P15 is asking you to write a program which uses a while loop to display the conversion, blah, 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 from kilograms and pounds. All right, so I'm going to give you an example with, let's say, some kind of a currency. So this is number 15. Okay, so I'll turn this off. And let's do a P15 hint. So P15 hint. All right, So let's say we have some kind of a currency. Give me a currency. And something else.
Euro.
What's 1 euro in terms of dollars? All right. Want to convert dollars to
1.142.
euro. 1.12.
1.142.
142. Okay, so $1 is equal to 1.142 euro, correct?
Opposite. 1 euro is equal to 1.142.
1 euro is equal to $1.42. Okay? All right. So what I want to do is I want to see dollars on the left, or let's do euros on the left and dollars on the right, right? Euro to dollars. All right, to make the math easier. Okay, so first what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make a loop, right? I want to convert euro to dollars, showing euros, I don't know, 5, 10, all the way to, I don't know, 50. Okay, in increments of 5. So let's do another one in here so you know what's happening. So 45. Okay, so I want those. So first I'm going to show the euros. So I know how many times this is going to happen. It goes from 5 to 50. The increments are 5. So I'm going to go for I in range from 5 to 50 in increments of 5. And let me just, in fact, I'm going to change it. I'm not going to call it I. I'm going to call it euro because I can. Right? Print now euro is equal to euro. Okay? Run it. And well, I didn't get all the way to the last one. Okay, no problem. Fix my loop. Make it go to 55. And now it does it. So now it does 5, 10, 15, all the way to whatever I need. Okay? Next thing I want to do is I'm going to calculate the dollar. Or, yeah. So in here, let's say I'm going to add a variable called dollar. And dollar is going to be equal to my euro times 1.142. Okay? And then I'm just going to show you that variable. So this here now is dollar equals dollar. And if I run it again, now you can see this. Okay? I kind of don't like this format. I don't want to see the euro equals here every time and the dollar equals every time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change this. All right? I'm going to get rid of this here. And I'm going to put just a little space in between, like that. And then I'm going to put the labels on top before the loop. So I don't want to see this every time. I want to see it one time on top, like a label, and then the numbers underneath. Okay? So I just do print euro, and then a little space and dollar. And if it doesn't look right, no problem. I will just close enough, right? So still, I can do some things. I don't want to see this many decimals. Let me round this thing to 2 decimals. So I'm going to round the dollar to 2 decimals. I'm just going to leave this so you know the progress of things. So in here, I got to do %.2f, and I'm going to change this to a %. Run it again. Now it's a little better, right? Maybe I can add a little space in here, right? I'm going to add 1, 2 spaces, maybe 3. Run it again. There you go. Okay. Now there is another issue. And that issue is, so I rounded this column fine, but notice that it's actually shifting, right? So when it goes from 1 digit to 2 digits, it forces this column to shift 1 to the right. Okay, and if I told this thing to go to, let me tell it to go to like 110 or something, so you can see what happens. So let's say this is all the way to 105, so you can see it do it again. Take a little longer to show it, but whatever. So see what happens? When this column was 1 digit, this is lined up like so. When we go to 2 digits, it forces this column to go shift one to the right. When we go to 3 digits, it forces it to shift another one to the right. So we don't want that. How are we going to prevent this from happening? I'm going to tell it to reserve 3 digits for this column. So I know that there's going to be up to 3 digits. So I'm going to go in there. I'm going to say, all right, percent 3i. All right? And then comma, but not comma, percent. So what the percent 3i tells it is, percent 3i tells it reserve 3 spaces for the integer that will go here. Right? Which integer is it going to go there? This one. Right? The euro is going to go in there, and I want to have 3 spaces reserved for whatever that is going to, whatever number is going to go in there. So let's try it again. Now it's lined up. Okay? Questions? So there you go. That's your P15 hint. And let's go to the next one. The tuition table. And that's the one that you talked about, the multiplication. Right? So notice you have the problem is this. You have a tuition for a university, which is, it starts at $10,000 per year and it increases 5% every year. Right? So that actually really happened to me, by the way. They doubled up my tuition when I was in San Jose State during the recession. All right, so it was worse than this. Anyway, so let's do a hint on that. All right, so now I'm going to do P16 hint. P16 hint. All right. So let's say you have a person that starts at a weight of, I don't know, 120 pounds. Okay? And the person increases their weight by, I don't know, 12.3% every year. Okay? So you want to see what is the weight of that person during, I don't know, 10 years. So make a loop. So do I know how many times this thing is going to happen? 10 years, right? Once per year, I'm going to make a loop. So I know I'm going to call it a year in range from 0 to 10, steps of 1, right? And I'm going to show you the year first, just make sure the loop works. Year, is it going to show us 10 times? It does, right? 0 to this. If I want to, I can do a +1 in there to show the actual year. All right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10. Okay, so now the next thing is I'm going to make up a variable. I'm going to call it weight. I'm going to make this thing equal to 120 pounds, right, initially. Okay, and then my weight is going to increase its value by whatever every year. So the first year, I'm just going to show you the weight. Weight equals weight, right? And then as soon as that year is done, I'm going to tell the weight, you're now equal to your, well, basically weight plus weight times 0.123. Okay? That's 12.3%. Okay? You can also do weight is equal to weight times 1.123. Right? 123. There you go. All right? Either way works. Either way is fine. Okay? So, let's see what it does. Keep your fingers crossed. See how much this person weighs. 340 pounds in 10 years. Okay? You can do similar calculations if you want to figure out your retirement, all kinds of different things like that. Okay? You can write these for fun. You want to see how much money you need to put into a bank account before you become a millionaire? By the way, if you invest money into the S&P 500 index, the average for that thing has been in the last, I don't know, 120 something years, has been 10% per year. And that is including the Great Depression, the Great Recession that we went through. Average is 10% per year. So some of these, like the second richest person in the world, Warren Buffett, he says that when he dies, all his money is going to go into an index fund, the S&P 500. So if you want to make money, if you want to see what happens to money, right, just say put 20,000 in a bank account and let it accumulate. See what happens to it. Okay, so you can do that this way. Any questions? So that's your example for P16, right, with a weight instead of something else. P17, I already showed you under, right, the example with sum and sum of negative values that were entered. But let's go back, let's go to the positive and negative numbers. Yeah, so the user tells you how many numbers they want in advance, and then, and then at the end, you have to ask them if they want to repeat the program, right? So how are we going to do that? I already showed you, but I'll do it again. All right? So at the end, I want to see, all right, do you want to repeat? Input, would you like to repeat? And tell them yes, no, so they know what to enter. And then if my repeat is not equal to yes, then I'm just going to break it. What am I going to break? This whole thing. So I'm going to start, what piece do I want to repeat? Again, if you don't see it, right, this is the piece, right, all the way to, basically all the way at the end, this whole thing. All right, so I'm just going to grab this whole thing, I'm going to tab it, I'm going to throw a while true in front, while true, right? A never-ending loop that's going to repeat this piece forever until they stop it. So let's try it. How many numbers would you want to enter? I don't know, 3 numbers. 1, 2, 3. Great. Do I want to repeat? Yes. Right? I want 4 numbers. 1, 2, 3, 4. There you go. Okay. So an easy mistake to make is you forget to put these here. Maybe you forgot to put this inside your loop, right? So if I forgot to put this, let's say, let me take these out and put them in here. Why is this a problem? Sum is not going to reset each time. It's going to keep adding the old like whatever you ran it the first time and found the sum, and now it's just going to keep adding more values into it. Okay, so make sure that whatever you want to repeat, if there's anything that needs to be reset like these, it's got to be in the loop. Okay, so that is your P17 hint. More hints than you need, but hey, I'll do it. All right. So the next one, so 15, 16, 17. Now we have penny or $1 million. Okay. So this one is similar to the tuition business. All right. So in fact, where's my tuition or the weight? So this is your hint for P16 and for P18. Okay? And the difference in P18 is basically you're given 30 days and you have a penny which is going to double its value every day. And my question to you is, which one do you think is going to make you more money, the penny or $1 million? Any ideas? Penny, right? Do you know how much the penny is at day 30? It's $5 million. Crazy, huh? And that's the the power of exponential growth basically. So if you save a little bit of money, put them aside, throw them into the S&P 500 index. It's going to double up every 10 years, right? But you let it double up long enough, and that's how rich people stay rich. Okay? So that's the 18. So I think that's enough hints for 18. 19. 19 is interesting, and I provided you with hints on the bottom, all right? And it has to deal with the ASCII table, right? So I'm asking you to do this. Write a program that uses a loop to display the characters in the ASCII character table from the exclamation to the tilde. What is the ASCII table? This is the ASCII table, right? There's probably better pictures, and you'll see it better when you open it on your screen than this resolution here. But the ASCII table is basically every character on your keyboard. Right? Let's say the letter A, the letter B, these are the uppercase letters. Each of these corresponds to a decimal number. So the letter A, uppercase A, is 65. Letter B is 66. You go down to letter R or whatever. Letter Z is 90. Right? So let's say, for example, I wanted to show just the letters. So this is going to be your hint. So I want to show, this is your number 19. Okay. So P19 hints, right? I want to show the uppercase letters 5 per line, right? So first I'm going to show the ASCII numbers. So let's say I'm going to say for ASCII in range from, what's my uppercase letter? A, uppercase A is 65, uppercase Z is 90. So from 65 to 90, steps of 1. Is this going to work? First I want to test my loop, because I don't know, I don't believe myself. Alright, run it, and it doesn't go all the way to 90. Okay, hold on, I got to adjust my loop. Alright, make this to 91, run it again. So now it's showing me 65 through 90. Okay, now instead of showing these numbers, all right, I'm going to just show them, instead of showing you the ASCII, all right, let's just do this. I'm going to do and equals, quote, quote. So I'm going to show all these numbers on the same line now. There you go. So 90 numbers, 65 through 90. These are the ASCII values. How do we convert ASCII to characters? You can look at this thing right here. So print char 97. So if I go in there, so instead of this now, I'm going to copy this thing. And instead of ASCII, I'm going to do char, C-H-R, ASCII. Okay? So now when I do this, when I run this, this shows you the letters. Okay? But there's still not 5 per line. How am I going to do 5 per line? The easiest thing for your brain for now, I think, is if you just count things. Right? So you can just make a count variable. Right? This one will count every letter shown. So where did I show the letters? Right here. Show all the letters on the same line. And then here I'm going to count is equal to count plus 1. So increase count by plus 1 every time you show a letter. Okay? Does that make sense? And then if my count becomes equal to, let's say, 5, because I wanted to show 5 per line, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to show a new line. Right? Show a new line. Right? So if I counted 5 letters, I show a new line. And again, it really is helpful to you if you can write a bunch of comments so you can explain to yourself what you're doing. Otherwise, you probably are just guessing. Okay, so I'm going to run this. Let's see what happens. It does it right one time and then it stops. Why is that? Huh? The loop? What about the loop? So I did it one time, good, and then it stopped.
Reset count.
Reset count. Think about what happens to count. Count starts at 0, and increases by 1 every time I show a letter, right? So it's 1 here, 2, 3, 4, 5. It gets to 5. We detect that. We show a new line. Then what happens to count? What is it here? 6, 7, 8. It's never equal to 5 again. So what do I have to do? How do I reset it? Count equals 0, just like I did in the beginning. So restart counting. Right? Save it, run it. And there you go, 5 per line. Okay? This kind of counting business is very, very handy. You are going to count things all the time. There's more applications for counting than you can imagine. Like anything can be counted. Okay? So a lot of problems can be solved with just this kind of approach. Okay? So this is P19. So what you have to do is you actually have to do everything from the exclamation to the tilde. Right? So you have to show all these here. I only showed you, the uppercase alphabet. Okay, so what do you have to do? You have to go in there and look at it. The exclamation is 33. The tilde is 126. So you make a loop that goes from 33 to 126, and you change it to 10 per line. Okay, so not very complicated now that you have the example. All right, the next one is numbers from 1 to 1000, x per line. Right, very similar to this one, except now you're just going to be showing numbers, and it's not going to be a fixed 10 per line. It's going to be whatever the user wants to. Right, the user is supposed to enter a number which is going to be between 10 to 20. We don't want it to be too narrow. We don't want it to be too wide so that it fits in the shell screen. So you have to do the input validation. Right, so make sure the user only enters an x with a value between 10 to 20. So you're going to have one of those. Where is it that I have this? Right, one of these, right? This kind of an input validation for the user entering how many numbers per line they want to show. Okay, if it's less than 10 or bigger than 20, tell them to enter another number over and over until they get it right. Okay, and then it looks like this. If you do this, you get full credit. You can also space these things nicely using the %i thing that I showed you, which was this business right here. You can do this %3i so that you can show them in nice little, 3-digit columns so they're all lined up. Okay? You don't have to. All right, so that's the 20. And the last assignment for this week is the 21. So 21. Write a dice program that generates 2 random numbers between 1 to 6 that will result in the output like something, something, something. Right? So, I'll give you a hint on that. Did we do random numbers already? Somebody did.
Rock, paper, scissors, right?
We did the rock, paper, scissors, but we're not required to do random numbers for that. For this, you have to do random numbers. So let me give you a hint on this too. Last one for the week, P21. I'm going to turn this off. So this is your P19 and P20 hint. So now we're doing P21 hint. What does it do? Oh yeah. So what am I supposed to do? Write a dice game that generates 2 random numbers between 1 to 6. Okay, how do I do a random number? The easiest thing to do is just say from random import. How do you spell import? Import rand int. I can do it. All right. So from random import rand int. Okay. And rand int is how we're going to make a random integer. Okay, which is what we need. So let's say I'm going to have dice 1 is equal to rand int between 1 to 6. Right. I'm going to have a dice 2 which is equal to rand int from 1 to 6. Right. And I'm going to show these. Say this is the user rolling the dice. Right. I'm going to show them print. You rolled dice 1, and dice 2, right? And you tell them repeat is equal to input, would you like to keep these, right? And then if repeat is equal to, I don't know, if repeat is equal to, I should tell them yes, no, so they know what to enter. So if the repeat is not equal to yes, then I'm going to break it, okay? And if you do it just like this, without a loop, it will complain, it will give you a syntax error that the break is outside of a loop, right? So I need to put a loop. Where should I put the loop? I want the user to be able to repeat this thing again and again until, like, you tell them, would you like to keep these? They say no. They throw another dice. They roll another 2 sets of dice. You roll again and again and again until they want to keep it. So where do I put the loop? Here? Does that make sense? If I throw it in there, what's going to happen? You rolled 3 and a 3. Would you like to keep these? No. Whoops. Hold on. Would like to keep these. So if it's not equal to no. One more time. You have to make sure that you don't mislead yourself with these questions. Would you like to keep these? No. It's doing the same numbers again. Same numbers again. I don't want that. I want new numbers. So what do I fix? How do I fix it? Put it on the very top. Okay, so I'm going to grab this thing. I'm going to put it right there. I'm going to grab these two. Move these to the right. And now when I run this, all right, do you want to keep these? No, 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 no. And notice sometimes it will just mess with you. It will make the same numbers twice in a row, just to, freak you out. Don't worry about it. It does that. Okay, so yeah, finally I'm happy with these, and I say yes. And now the computer gets to roll 2 dice, and then you compare and see who's the winner. Okay? Is this whole thing supposed to be repeated? No, that's it. And then you just find the winner after that. That's all I have. Any questions? Yes, sir.
So I noticed for one of them, I guess P17 or 16, the number, it wouldn't round up when you multiply. I think it's the original.
So in the example I did,
Round up or just round down. Is there a way to make it round up?
you're gonna have to do some math to round it up. If you're trying to round the float, so let's say for example rounding. So rounding, right? So let's say I have pi is equal to 3.14 and e is equal to, what's e? 2.78. All right. So let's go with the e. Well, I'll go with both. So here, if I do print, let's say int pi. Int pi is equal to int pi, right? And if I do int e is equal to int e, right? And I show you print int e is equal to int e, and int pi is equal to int pi. All right. Let's have a look at what this thing comes out to. I run it. All right, so look what it does. When I force it to be an integer, it cuts off the decimal digits. Right, so it's not going to round up or down. It will just deletes the decimals. Okay, there's a ways for you to round this thing. So let's say this thing is like, I want to round this thing to 1 decimal digit. Right, so I'm going to do another one under. I'm going to say float pi is equal to percent 0.1f percent pi, right? Just like you would round a string. Technically, it will be a string at this point, but now you can go and say float for that whole thing, but let's just leave it as a string so you can see how it rounds. And then I'm going to say float e is equal to %point 1f, and then this is %e, okay? And I'm going to copy this thing, and I'm going to change this float pi, float e, and run it again. And there you go, now it rounds. So if you want to do actual rounding, you can just do this kind of a business, right? To round a variable, just like you would normally do this inside of a print, you could do that, okay? If you want to cut off the decimals altogether, you just cast it to become an integer, okay? Make sense? Any other questions? We're good? Okay. So, that's about all I can tell you for this week. What I'm going to do is I am going to post the lectures, the lecture notes, and the video. Not sure how long it's going to take me for the video. But if you want to get started, do it now and let me know if you need help.